Don't remember that. I remember bits and pieces of them running all these tests. But the problem was, and yes, we told them I had hydrocephalus. I knew we were there. But because it had been so many years, I mean, we're talking over 30 years since I even had a CAT scan done or an MRI or anything. And, 30 years ago, everything was paper. We don't have that no more. So they didn't have x-rays to compare my ventricles to, because they look in here. And so if they're swollen or, there's different things they look for, well, they didn't have that because it's been that long. And so it was probably 5 days of that, of excruciating, I don't even remember most of it because you're that out of it from the pain. And when you get to that point, there's no pain meds that fixes it. There's no combination at that point. And so I just remember the doctor coming in. He's like, this is our last result, is we're just going to go in and basically do an exploratory of your brain. I'm like, dude, I don't even care anymore. I don't even care. Just let me call my pastor. He can pray over me and he can roll me out. I'd probably gone like 5-6 days without eating because it's that much. And so they do the surgery, and he said once he went in, it basically, because it's tubing, it's extremely small tubing, which I'm in the medical field, but in the animal medical field. But all medical is super cool to me. So, of course, I want to see all of it. And so he said once he went in, it basically disintegrated. The whole tubing just all fell apart. I mean, we're talking over 30 years tubing.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like 30 years, it's not as if I don't want to use the word neglect because, and Mike, it's not neglect because, as you just said, Mindy, these procedures weren't exactly commonplace back then. But it is the accumulation of ignoring it. Not that it was something you wanted to do, but did that factor in?
No, and he did say, because like now I'm on yearly visits. And so what he said was he honestly thought it was a mixture of it being old, my extremely hard workouts, and then maybe the crazy tubing a little bit. But because when I was doing the sit-ups, I would, I would touch my head here a lot. And he was saying he couldn't rule out that maybe I was irritating it by doing that every day. But he said most likely it was just from wear and tear. And so 2 years ago, I had started having the same symptoms again. And it was actually 2 years, like last week, I think. And again, I'm a bad patient. And so I wait until probably too far to go to the hospital because I know once I get there, I know they're going to poke, they're going to prod, they're going to run every test in the book. And it's routine. I know it. So my daughter was a senior 2 years ago, and she came home from lunch. She knew. And so she came home. She called my husband. She's like, I'm rushing her to the hospital. I think she even threw me over her shoulders and took me to the car. I don't remember that either. And they ended up, again, same thing, rushing me to the other hospital. Because our hospital here in Angleton, we're a small town. We're just south of Houston. We don't have neurologists or, we don't have like a NICU. We're not a big hospital like that. And so they send you out to like Houston or Galveston to the trauma centers when there's anything big. And so I knew that's what they were going to do. And that time, though, they get me to the hospital, and this nurse comes in, and it was my same neurosurgeon from the time before. And he walked in, he's like, it's you again. I'm like, yeah, I'm back. But this time there was a nurse that was not supposed to be on the neuro floor at all. She was called in that day. She is not a neuro nurse. She actually worked another floor, but that day they called her there to cover someone else. And she asked me, had they given me this and this combination of meds before? And I'm like, I don't think so, but nothing works. And she's like, well, do you care if we try? And I'm like, I don't care. It's not going to work, but sure, go for it. Because usually my pain level is a 10. Well, after she gave me that, within 10 minutes, my pain level was a 2.
Wow.
And so that was truly a God thing that I had that nurse. But it worked into my stubbornness because then when my neurosurgeon comes in and he starts talking about, okay, I think we're going to have to do surgery. I'm like, no, I'm fine. These meds are working. I'm good. And my issue was to go back. The surgery I had basically the year before that. So when they went in, for one, I was bald. No offense, but I was bald after that surgery. And so I wasn't rocking the bald head as well as you do. And I worked the front desk.
I always said that you had great manners and you were so nice to. That's really, you can't tell us how she really feels, but thank you.
But it took that one really rocked me because it took me 3 months to even be able to drive again, to work again, to even really get out of bed. And so, because when they went in that time, they tore every tendon in my neck. And so I was basically like a bobblehead. I couldn't even hold my head up. Muscle
And
relaxers
did
wouldn't
like
help or anything.
the shunt drain the fluid from your head to your abdominal area? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's how
so
they do
I
it.
don't know why he tore all the tendons in my neck because that had never, and I know when I was a kid, I bounced back quick. Like I was wanting to go ride my bike and play and stitches all in me. I didn't think anything was wrong with me, but I was a kid. Kids are resilient. They don't know they're sick. But I knew I was hurting 3 years ago. And so I had to go through rehab and all these different things just to even get to work, and it's like, I'm not a person to sit around. I've probably got ADHD because I can't even sit still to do anything. I'm constantly moving. I've always got something I got to do. So it drove me crazy of 3 months not being able to do anything. I mean, and my youth kids were great. They all took turns coming and taking care of me, making sure I took my meds when I needed to, that I went to my doctor's appointments. They drove me. It's great having, teenagers that'll drive you around. It was amazing. But it was a lot of rehab, and, health and fitness has been my thing. It's been my refuge after losing Michelle, when I realized that's my place I can go to clear my brain for a couple hours of nothing but my music and focusing on what I'm doing. And so I had that 3 months. I could not do that. I couldn't even hardly walk. And so I had a few setbacks where a couple of times I would try to go to the track when everybody was at work and go walk the track, and end up having to call someone to come get me because I overdid it. And so this time I'm a little better. I have the most amazing neuro team possible, to where when he did come in and he's like, I think it's time again. I think we need to go in and do exploratory and see what's going on. Because all my tests looked good this last time, but we knew. And so I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need surgery this time. And he's like, so if I take you off all your meds, are you good? No, I need my meds. And so we did. And that time again, when he went in, it basically disintegrated. It fell apart. And so what I've learned since then, after 2 years ago, I really started doing a lot more research on this. And I've actually found support groups that have hydrocephalus like I do. I even met a guy. I was doing Shattered Dreams. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Shattered Dreams. In Houston, right before the world all shut down and the pandemic shut us all down, and where you go speak to junior or high school kids. It's usually juniors and seniors of prom. And
that way, I know. Is that the one where Howard Collado shows up and promises you that he'll provide entertainment across the board, and he never does?
Absolutely, yeah.
I know about that shattered dream. Sure. Yeah.
He shatters everybody's dreams.
Everyone.
I love Howard.
Oh, you're the one. Okay.
Well, I'm Team Holiday, but I still love Howard.
Oh, you're
Team Holiday. Oh, I like
can't help
Gentle
it.
now.
That's the team. That's the winning
But
team.
I'm Howard too, though. I like Howard. I think he's very sweet. But
It's just
I
that
met a
Aubrey
guy
guy.
that has a shunt, and his was caused from impaired driving, but he was shunted. And so that was the first time I'd met anybody that had a shunt. So now we call each other shunt buddies. And he was the same deal, where he had like fluid, and he had brain injury. And so we're shunt buddies. But I've learned that there's, some of us can go 30 years, just visiting our neuros once a year. Some people have had, like I've had somewhere around 10 surgeries, I think. And there's some that had like 30 surgeries and so much more, to where it's like, sometimes I get frustrated because it is daily, to where I have headaches. It's pretty common. Neck aches are extremely common. And so, like a lot of the places you go into work have these COVID questionnaires you have to answer before you can get into places, and headaches one of them. Body, all these different things. And I always tell my boss, I'm like, I live with those daily. So can you get me a new list of questions for COVID? Because that's my daily stuff. And she's like, well, you know the difference. So you're different. I'm like, oh, I know.
Mike, I got to ask Mike. Mike, does the mind adapt to these situations after it becomes the norm, I guess?
To a certain extent, it tries to. You live in that pain for so long that, it does start to become the normal. The thing I find interesting is I knew somebody with the same situation, hydrocephalus. When I was a special education teacher, there was a young girl with spina bifida. Anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's extreme curvature of the spine. And
Mike, just
it's
for our
really
viewers out there, I know this is kind of like a Hollywood example, but Pet Sematary, there was a scene with his sister, and she was. Is that an exaggerated version of that? spine
Bifida.
it's bifida.
And a lot of times they're in wheelchairs, but this one girl had hydrocephalus because of the condition with her spine, and the fluid would build up. And like you were saying, Mindy, it enlarged her head, and she had a shunt, and she was constantly going and having to get things redone and fixed and stuff like that. But that was the first time I ever had experience with something like that, and it was strange and interesting to me that they empty it into the abdomen. That's into the stomach basically, which was interesting. I was like, why would they do that? Because it just deals, your body deals with it like it would just through the stomach instead of the regular way.
Exactly.
But yeah, it is one of those things though, Avi, like you were asking. It's, with me in the leg situation, it's your body. You become accustomed. You learn how to make that the new norm and get around each day and deal with the challenges of life with this situation. And I think it's kind of the same thing.
I agree.
And hearing about that, like, to me, it's almost again, if you've been living with this for so many years, what would you suggest for anyone that goes through a condition like this? Obviously, you have a ton of perseverance. That's a given. We know that from your story. But what are the biggest challenges day to day that you're still going through?
Pain is one, and I guess I've kind of gotten used to it. And so, I still work out every day, but I have to sometimes reorganize my workout.
Right, sure.
Based on sometimes extreme fatigue is part of it too. And so it's one of those that I'm a stubborn person. And so that's part of my problem, but it also makes me push myself through because, I don't want my kids to see me always have an excuse of why I can't do something. Because there's always an excuse. And, when I was growing up and I was sick, it would kind of get on my nerves that, because back then the schools they didn't know how to work with sick kids. So like they wouldn't allow me to be in all the honors classes or the I always called the smart kid classes because I missed them at school. But I was also super bored at school when I was there. So it's kind of like this intertwined thing. But like my mom would always tell me, because I never felt good and I still don't. But her thing always to me was nobody ever feels 100%. Get up and go to school. And so, it kind of like stuck in my head where even now as an adult, I almost never call in sick to work.
So you kind of have that chip on your shoulder where you have something to prove just because of the adversity that you dealt with.
Exactly.
Not really adversity from yourself or what you felt might have been challenging, but from how you were perceived by others.
Absolutely. Because, I did have – my principals hated me because I was missing so much school. They usually thought I was faking, even though after the surgeries I was usually bald. Or, sometimes I was rocking half a head of hair because I refused to let them shave the whole head. And so it's like, they saw what I was going through, but they would still usually tell me, well, you're not going to amount to anything. You're not going anywhere or things like that. And so, and then I did grow up in an extremely poor neighborhood too. I grew up what we call the ghetto of Houston. So, that played a part in it because the majority were skipping school because they didn't want to be there for whatever reason. And so I was skipping school usually because I didn't feel well. I didn't feel 100%. I didn't feel like, straining to study or, I could never see well and they didn't know or we couldn't afford glasses or whatever. And so I could never see the board, but I was always put in the back of the class because I don't know if y'all know this, but I like to talk. And so they would try to move me around to keep me from people to talk to. So that usually wound me up in the back of the class. And, because I was that kid, it didn't matter who you moved me next to, I was going to make friends with whoever was next to me anyways. And so they would move me around, but then I couldn't see the board because I couldn't see. And so I think that is one of those things where I kind of have
Sounds like those teachers definitely haven't forgotten about you. No matter what, they had to change the seat arrangement. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, yeah. They always had to work to keep me quiet. And, and two of my kids are like that now to where then I'm like, it's like they take after their mother. I can't help it. It's like, sorry. And so, two of them are like that. My middle one's super quiet, and he's the one that the teachers don't call me about. The other two, and I'm friends with all the teachers because of, and But it was one of those things that it's like, I don't want my kids to have an excuse. And so I'm that way now. And as my daughter's getting into the work world, the adult world, I see it in her. I see that she sees that I don't call in sick to work. I don't allow bullying either. You're not, I don't care if I'm 5 foot nothing and, I don't care. You're not, there's no reason for that. You stand up for the weak. You stand up for the ones that can't stand up for themselves. And there's a lot like us. And I'm learning that the more research I do on hydrocephalus, all these pages I'm in, there's so many out there that